Hello, so now we are going to create pie charts using a random number generator. So we're going to create a series of random numbers, but we want them to all be integers this time instead of being doubles. So the way that we can do that is we create a variable in one, and then we can use the function rand_i. And similar to before, we can specify the range over which we want to create our random numbers. So I'm just going to do 0 to 5. And then a little bit different syntax. So this range here is going to be in brackets to show the vector. And then over here, we can specify the number of the elements we want in our array. So let's do 1 to 1000. So it's a little bit of different syntax than the previous video, but it'll end up with a similar result. So here in our workspace we have our variable n1. So if I double click on that, you can see I have a bunch of numbers between 1 and 5 in this matrix here. And what we're going to do with that is try and create a pie chart. So the first thing we want to do is find the number of unique values. So it's less important because we know that we'll have unique values between 1 and 5. So we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But in the case where you're using some data set where you might not know how many unique numbers you have, it might be valuable to try and find the unique values. So for this, I'm going to create a variable uv and use the function unique. And this is just going to look through my entire matrix and see what the different unique values are and how many of them there are. So let's see, unique, and then I'm going to pass n1 to that. Okay, and in the workspace we see that uv has an array. It's a matrix containing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is what we expected by putting this into the random number generator. So if I change n1 to go from, instead of 1 to 5 to 2 to 5, and then run the same code, we can see that the size of our UV vector changes, and instead of 1 to 5, it's now going 2 to 5. So that's just how you do that. So let's change it back to 1 to 5. So the next thing we want to do is count the number of values that correspond to each one of our unique values. So we're going to use a function called histCount, and we're going to pass our vector n1 into it, and essentially we're going to bin everything using our unique values. So similar to when we were doing the histograms, we're telling it what our matrix is and what our bins are, and that will allow us to count the number of 1s, the number of 2s, the number of 3s, 4s, 5s, etc. So we'll see if that works. Oops. Oh yes, so I made a little mistake here. So this should actually be histCounts, not histCount. So try that again. Okay, so now up here in n, we have the count. So our n1 vector is going to contain a total of 195 1s, 204 2s, 169 3s, and 432 4s. You might notice that we're missing something here. So instead of just putting UV in here, we're going to specify that we want to use our last value in our unique values vector as the number of bins that we have, and we'll try and run that. Okay, so now we have the value for 5 as well. So you notice that those didn't match. So this is just taking 5 here and telling histCounts that we want 5 bins total, because before I was just doing 4. Okay, so the next thing we can do is create our pie chart. So we're going to just do pi n and see what comes up with that. Ah, sweet. Okay, so we have percentages for all of our different numbers, but we don't really know exactly what corresponds to everything. And you'll see that everything is around 20%, which makes sense using our random number generator because we weren't trying to weight any one of those numbers above the others. So let's do something to label these so we know what each one corresponds with. So in order to do this, I'm going to do what's called a for loop. And this is going to iterate. So I'm going to set, essentially my counter value is I, and I'm going to set that to start at 1, which is the first value in our unique values vector. And then I'm going to have it go until the last value in UV, which is 5 in our case. And what I'm going to do here is I am going to create a label vector. So this is going to create a cell, and then I'm going to use the function num to string to convert all of my values in my UV vector into strings, so I can use them as labels. Otherwise, Matlab's not going to understand it when I'm trying to input a bunch of numbers into my labels, which are supposed to be strings. So here we go. So let's do this. Num to string. So this will just take my vector. So let's see, what do we want? We want UV, and then we're going to go through each value of UV. Okay, so what this for loop is going to do is it's going to iterate. So the first time it runs, it's going to plug in 1 here for I. So in the first position of this label cell, we're going to convert UVI, which is in our case 1, into a string. So then in the first position of labels, we'll have a string that contains 1. And then this is going to loop again, and this will now step up to 2. And so we're going to get the second value in our UV vector, convert it to a string, and put that in position 2 of our labels cell, and so on and so forth. So then it'll be 3 in here, and put that 3 in the 3rd position, 4 in 4th position, etc. So we can actually change the step size here. So if we wanted to do 0.5, similar to when we were doing linspace, we can do that as well when we are first creating vectors. But right now we're okay with a step space of 1, which is just the default. So that's how a for loop works in general. And then you'll always want to end your loop with end. So whenever you're done having it loop, then you want to put the end command so Matlab knows that the rest of your code is outside of the loop. Okay, oops. So the next thing we want to do is try and input this, our labels, into the pi command. So we can create a new figure, oops, here, and try that. Ah, yay. Okay, so now we have labels that correspond with our numbers. So now this is our percentage of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, and then there's something else cool that we can do with pie charts. So we can actually pull out different segments of the pie using the explode command. Oops, explode. So we're just going to create a matrix because these are all numbers. So I'm going to just explode the 3rd value. So if we create another figure, pi, and then n, explode, and labels. So this should put in our labels, and this should pull out that 3rd segment of our pie chart. So now, yep, so you can do this with all of them if you want. If you want to highlight a particular region of your pie chart. You can also, so if you want different labels, what we can do here, so we can have cat, dog, rabbit, fish, oops, and I don't know, tiger. So that should match the number that we have here. We'll try and run this again and make sure it works. Yay, okay. So if you want to do something like that, you can just put in your text like that. You don't have to do the loop. So that's how you make a pie chart in here. And then, of course, you can add titles and things like that, change the colors. So just look into the pie chart. So if you type in help pie here into the command window, we'll get some information about what we can do with our pie chart